News 9 big coverage of 5 assembly polls. Mandate 2023.
Hello everyone, Namaskar. I'm music composer Ricky Cage. 3-time Grammy Award winner and a United Nations Goodwill Ambassador. And you're watching me on First Person on News 9 Plus.
This and more streaming now on the world's first news OTT, News 9 Plus. Download now.
He thought he could outlast us. And 1 year later, the evidence is right here in this room.
Who will blink first?
So far from preventing the expansion of NATO, Russian actions have actually resulted in the expansion of NATO.
It's a mess for Russia and it's a mess for the Western world, for NATO and the United States.
Putin is a dictator, and if he loses, that means the end of his regime, and probably of him personally. So he has to keep going.
Year 2. No end in sight. Streaming now.
Welcome to the second part of On Point, and in this we are going to talk about a historic deal that has been signed. Amit Shah, Home Minister, in his tweet said that the peace agreement signed today with the UNLF by the Government of India and the Government of Manipur marks the end of a 6-decade-long armed movement. It is a landmark achievement in realizing Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji's vision of all-inclusive development, providing a better future to the youths in Northeast India. Let me play out those visuals for you. First, I'll play out the graphics for you. UNLF agrees to renounce violence and join mainstream. So this was indicated by the Chief Minister a couple of days ago. And UNLF is one of the oldest armed groups in Manipur. UNLF, oldest. And 50 years of UNLF's confrontation with security forces comes to an end. So I think it's a good achievement when it comes to Manipur. At least the talk is on. An opportunity to address long-standing concerns of the community. So in a way, the government is going out. It paves the way for the other valley-based armed groups to surrender, because ultimately when the conversation used to take place, people would say you are only talking about Sioux militants. You're not talking about valley-based militants. So that is one. Now let us play out those visuals. Let us play out those visuals that that were tweeted by the Home Minister himself. And this is like laying down of the arms. So that's very important. Our discussion will include two parts. The first is the importance of this decision, and the second is a very important decision made by direction given by Supreme Court of India yesterday, in which Supreme Court of India said that the burial will take place in designated areas and you cannot use the dead bodies to keep the pot boiling. On this issue, I am joined by noted author Rami Niranjan Desai, and in studio I am joined by my input editor Brijesh Pandey. Brijesh, your comments on the deal which happened today, and also on the observation of the court in which they said you cannot keep the pot boiling and allowed the state government to bury the dead in the 9 designated areas.
Well, I think, as far as the peace process is concerned, Manipur, which has been witnessing violence for more than around 6 months now, I think it's a very welcome move. The sight of all those armed militants surrendering their guns, laying down their arms and all, and the fact that they are one of the oldest militant groups in the state is a good news as far as the state government is concerned, and the kind of the enthusiasm which has been shown by both Union Home Minister and Manipur Chief Minister N. Biren Singh, in announcing of how historic this deal is definitely welcome. And I completely agree with with the Supreme Court observation, because the court has also realized that if we go by what the civil society say, or how the civil society wants the burial or any other such situation being, if they take place, it has to be done as per their demand, their whims and fancies. I think the court has understood the importance of the fact that if these dead bodies aren't given a burial soon, they can become a potential flashpoint which may see a fresh round of violence. And I think going by the stern notings of the court, I think in a week's time or so, we might see the burial taking place.
Okay, wonderful. Rami, your thoughts on the two developments in the last 48 hours? Rami?
Good evening.
Good evening, Rami.
Good evening, Rajesh. It's nice to be back on your show, and I'm so glad that you're still following up the Manipur issue, because it's so important to us. Brajesh has given a great analysis of what this UNLF ceasefire means. It's, as you know, it's the oldest insurgent group, at least in Manipur. But this is something that the government, Karthikeya, has been focusing on, is solving some of the historic issues, not just in Manipur, but in the Northeast. There's been a 74% reduction in insurgency. Some of the oldest, most historic boundary issues between states have been resolved. And, this is another step and another feather in their hat in resolving some problems that needn't have stayed so long and could have been resolved with political will a long time ago. So, I think this gives us an indication on how committed this government is, under the leadership and the vision of Prime Minister Modi, as well as our Home Minister. I think the Chief Minister of the state also must have gone through multiple rounds of very successful negotiations to bring the UNLF to this point. We must also remember at this point, Karthikeya, that UNLF very recently, with the situation unfolding in Myanmar, lost one of its major camps just across Manipur near Tamu in the Myanmar region. So, as things also develop in Myanmar, there's a civil war-like situation, there is immense amount of conflict, and there are multiple insurgent groups. There's infighting, there's fighting against the junta. It's going to become more and more difficult for non-Myanmar groups to survive in these areas. So it obviously has multi-layers, this ceasefire, but nothing takes away from the good news that it is. And I think eventually any of these insurgent groups only existed for as long as they existed because they had the conducive environment and the lack of political will to do so. Today things have changed, and therefore we are seeing the results of it. As for the Supreme Court judgment today that we saw, this statement that Chief Justice made, saying that this is being used, it seems like this is being used as a way to keep the pot boiling, I think is a fairly accurate assessment. But having said that, Karthikeya, we have to look at it not just from a judicial point of view, but also a political point of view. If you remember, in 1995, the same thing had happened again in Ibobi Singh's government, wherein bodies were held back as negotiating fodder until and unless the BJP government came in and they brought a political solution. So as much as this is a judicial solution, and I think we must welcome it, but I think finally it will need a political solution as well, because this seems to have become a trend wherein you use bodies, and it's also it's also been noted, not just this time, but before also, that bodies have been used, families have been pressured to refrain, to make sure that they don't bury them, and I think that is possibly the most diabolical thing that a community can do to itself.
Rami, I'm going to come to this topic because, the first part of that issue was the direction of the court. The second was the role of certain civil society organization. I think the court was spot on. So first, let me take you through the pointers. I had made it for the viewers. Let me play them out. What did the court direct? This was reported today. Cannot keep bodies in mortuaries indefinitely. Obviously, you cannot create political capital. Cremation to be done at 9 designated sites. ITLF wanted the cremation to be done at their sites. Maiti community had their own issue. And then the court also said DNA sample of the victims will be drawn. The government is empowered to do that. And they are also at liberty to, create more publicity on this issue, to reach out to people, and disposal of unclaimed bodies to be done by the state government. Because what the ITLF and other people were doing was they were not letting people take their bodies. But let me go back to the same story which we're breaking. The peace deal that has happened, Chief Minister of Manipur, Biren Singh, has spoken on it. Once we are done with that bite, I'll come back to this issue.
First of all, I would like to congratulate and appreciate the Honorable Prime Minister Modi ji. Under his supervision, everything is happening. This UNLF organization is, 70 years old, the oldest organization in the entire Northeast. And we were trying to get them in the peace process since our government comes in 2017. But we could not achieve in the first part. But this time, with the trust and the confidence given by the Honorable Prime Minister Modi ji and Union Home Minister Amit Shah ji, the UNLF has agreed to come in the peace process. It is a great achievement of the state of Manipur and as well as for the nation. Peace process is a part of coming to the mainstream. Peace process will be started, and whatever the Amit Shah ji is telling, he is the architecture, he is everything about today's achievement of peace process, and I also like to congratulate him personally, because 24/7 he is looking after the state, looking after the entire Northeast to restore peace, particularly to bring all the insurgent groups in the peace process.
So Brijesh, Biren Singh is a happy man today.
Well, yes, he must be. And I think, if you look at the fact that, the state has been reeling under violence and, the attempt has been made by state to pursue peace, but you cannot initiate a political process, hard lines being drawn between the two communities. I think this peace agreement definitely come as a good news for both centre as well as the state. And I think, if you look at those visuals and all, it instills faith in systems maneuverability and also, systems attempt to outreach, to make an honest outreach to solve this problem. The government says that it is in all talk with other groups also to ensure that the situation and normalcy in the entire Northeast region returns. But it's a good, important and significant step towards that direction.
Rami, this is a good development that has taken place. But bringing your attention back to the issue of what the observation in the court was, there are civil society members are supposed to reduce polarization. Unfortunately to say, there is no pun intended, they are behaving like out of control Twitter handles, It's like increasing the polarization. I mean to say, if you look at the conversation that was taking place in the court, which has been reported by Live Law and many other things, it was mind-boggling the way conversation on this direction, the conversation which preceded the direction of the Honorable Court, that when the court decided to crack the whip and said, boss, this has to be done. So why there is so much of leeway given to this certain civil society organizations for continuing to keep the pot boiling?
Absolutely, civil society organizations that we have seen during this conflict, Kartike, have not really helped the cause. Almost that, they've polarized communities. And I think actions like this as to, not allowing the cremation of bodies, not allowing the burial of bodies, is greatly significant of how out of touch with human sentiment they are. The same people that they are meant to represent are the same people that they are denying basic human rights to. And this has always been a problem. And, you may remember, I've said this multiple times, that for a state that has CSOs that are dime a dozen, could not bring up one CSO that represented the sane voices from both of the communities, and there were many, many sane voices on either side of the communities, could not represent that and call for peace. So CSOs have started almost functioning as pressure groups, and I think people who support them must begin to question the validity of these groups in their societies, in their communities, But having said that, I think this problem
what
is
has happened,
deeper.
Rami, what I think as a journalist, what CSOs did, certain CSOs, I will not say all the CSOs, ultimately the will of the people rests with the elected representatives. What these certain CSOs did was they started to represent the people. You are not an elected person, but you started to represent the people of the state, different communities, and that shift took away a lot of powers, authority, or to say moral heft from elected representatives. I'm not saying that not to be blamed, but that shift was pretty much evident, Rami, exactly a month after the violence broke.
No, you're right, Karthikeya. Of course, that shift was there, and it also shows the kind of influence that they have on individuals, on citizens of the state, and therefore they can pressurize them, or maybe even subject them to some amount of threat and pressure tactics to ensure that they do what they want them to do. But this is a matter pertaining to what the society wants, and I think Manipur society will have to take a call on what sort of support they've got or not got from the same civil society organizations that represent them and function basis what apparently what the society wants. And I think unfortunately in this conflict we really haven't seen what we expected from them.
But what, Rami, before I start concluding this part of the conversation, do you think that there is a roadmap with the government in context of Manipur? I would say this is a good development, but this is not a this is one development. This can't be an end of a process,
See, Karthikeya, like I said, in both matters, right? Of course, you have, the judicial remarks that we've heard, and the directives that we've gotten. We've seen that a peace process has begun, which is great. I think if for nothing else, it gives us the right hope and puts us on the right track, and at least starts building a non-toxic narrative, which
Correct.
is what is all that I have seen on social media, as you have, and borne the brunt of it as well, So I think in that
I
sentiment,
still get tagged, Rami. I don't take it like khush nahi hota. It's not like it's not like a badge on the shoulder, but I still get tagged on odd things, In the previous organization, some Khalistani organization would run after me. They tagged me for 2 years, So it happens,
I'll take that as a compliment, Karthikeya. But having said that, let me also say that we have to watch, when you ask about the Manipur situation, and I wrote an article about this, I think which you read, Karthikeya, about a month and a half ago, that we have to really, really be careful about what's happening in Myanmar. Whatever happens in Myanmar is going to have a direct impact on not just Manipur, but the rest of the Northeast. We have to hope and pray that Myanmar doesn't break up. Already, there are so many vested interests. There is so much of conflict. Initially when the civil war-like situation started, it was just the Three Brotherhood Alliance under the banner of the NUG. But now all the other insurgent groups have jumped in. But more dangerously, Karthikeya, which is coming up in my next article, is that some of the most key towns and infrastructure on the border across Manipur have been taken by the insurgents. So we have to keep an eye on that. We have to be alert. This is just not the job of the security forces, but this is definitely the job of civilians who live on the border. I've said this before, I say it again. These borders are 640 kilometers of forest borders. You're not going to be able to fence them. China has not been able to fence its 2,000 kilometer border on the Myanmar-China border. They've not been able to fence it. We can't fence it. Even America can't fence its Mexico border. So some borders are difficult to completely plug. So therefore, this is going to be, a long drawn out thing. We have to deal with it very carefully.
Brijesh, to your concluding remarks on this, on the deal that was signed today. But more than that, do you think that there has to be sort of a broader plan? This can be a beginning of a development of a thing. Do you think there's a broader plan now required more than 7 months?
It should be, but honestly speaking, I don't see much of a broader plan there. But I agree with Rami when she says
Myanmar, absolutely.
It's a good start, and we have to really watch out for Myanmar, because it is not like we are working in isolation where we're talking about a state like Uttar Pradesh or a state like
that's the program we did.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a violence happening in one part of Uttar Pradesh where you can send police and paramilitary
that reminds
to compare
me when we
the
did our
entire
programs
thing.
on Myanmar, you were not there. So next time we do our program on Myanmar, Mizoram, please make time, because both me and Brijesh at least did 7 programs on Myanmar and Mizoram. And we know that, when we would say that we have to do this, and people would say, have you stopped doing Manipur? Why are you doing, have you migrated to Mizoram? But no pun intended. The point is that the whole concept was to keep focus on Northeast as an entity. I'm saying, jokes apart. The idea was to keep focus there.
Absolutely, Karthikeya. I think, that's the way to really.
And you're absolutely right. We do not understand the importance of Myanmar when it comes to India's security. I agree with you.
Also, Karthikeya, we have to understand that, when you look at a security situation, you don't look at it piecemeal. You have to look at it layer by layer as a whole. And therefore, looking at Myanmar is really important. We know that these tracks have been used before as well by insurgent groups. So to think that, that may not happen again, arms, ammunition, the fact that landing of drugs in the Northeast from Myanmar has increased by 40%, Karthikeya, tells us a lot. But of course, our seizures also have become far more.
Correct.
We are really being proactive. So we have to appreciate the job of our security forces, of our intelligence, but that doesn't mean that we must not be alert. But I'm sure with the developing situation in Myanmar, both of you are going to get multiple chances to talk about it and analyze it more, and I'll be there.
But you should be there, that is why I said it on air. But one thing I would always say, I thought whenever I end my show, that when it comes to Manipur, we need to get the weapons back. And that story should not be forgotten. We need to get those odd weapons back. This is a very good development that has taken place. Amit Shah had tweeted these visuals. It's fantastic. But I think the big day would be when all the weapons that have been looted are back.